Hey there, everyone. It's Jody Sutter of the Sutter Company. It's Just Ask Jody live. Although it's not really Just Ask Jody, it's actually Just Ask. Well, you can ask me anything you want. I'm happy to answer, but it's really about talking to the guests that I bring on every month and asking them. So I'll be asking them a lot of questions, certainly, and I hope that you will join me as well. So today, before we get to this, we will be talking to, in a few minutes, Russel Wohlwerth, who I've known for a long time. And many of you who are live with me today probably know Russell as one of the leading agency search consultants. And, but, he probably describe himself a little differently because really more broadly what he does is he is, I think of him as sort of the optimizer of agency client relationships. And agency search is part of that, but not all of what he does. However, that's kind of what we're going to be talking to him about today, because of course, the way marketers pitch, the way marketers hold reviews and the way agencies pitch marketers is what I'm interested in. And I want to help you get better at doing that. And Russell has a lot of insights. He's been doing this for a long time, more than 20 years. He's now a partner at Roth Ryan Hayes. And he's going to we'll be talking a little bit about what marketers expect in a review, but we're going to be getting into some very specific things about what happens on their end, how agencies can position themselves better, and just some really simple and, quite frankly, elemental things that we as agencies can do better in these pitches. But first, before we get to the conversation, I just want to do a quick reminder that this year for the second time, I'm doing a online masterclass on creating an annual new business plan for your agency. It's called the New Business Blueprint. I did it for the first time last year, and it seemed to go pretty well. So I'm doing it again this year. I'm doing a little bit differently this year. It's going to be 3 live sessions on 3 consecutive Wednesdays, November 29th, December 6th, and December 13th. Each session is only an hour long. And then there's also going to be some sort of short modules, pre-recorded curriculum that you can watch prior to, that'll be released a few days before the session. You can take a look at that, prepare, and then we'll do a live session with some coaching and some more, me discussing some frameworks that you can use to create an annual plan that you'll actually execute. Really what I want to do is give you guys a simple framework to encapsulate what you want to get done next year, and then also put it in a form that you will, as I said, actually execute. That's one of the biggest problems I see is plans get made, a lot of time gets invested in them, and then nothing happens. So there's the URL right here, thesuttercompany.com/new-business-blueprint. And I'm limiting it to 25 people, and there's still a few spots left. So please do sign up. All right. Thanks for letting me plug that. Let me get right back to introducing Russell. I'm going to have my team member, Megan, bring him on in. And we're going to talk about how agencies can pitch marketers a little bit better, how they can position themselves better. Hi, Russell. How are you today?
I'm good, Jody. It's very hot here in Los Angeles. It's 79 degrees.
Wow. And it is, I'm on the Eastern Seaboard, and it is actually quite chilly. It's like one of those days. It's like, oh yeah, winter is coming, which is not quite, it's not like in a Game of Thrones type of way, but winter is coming. Anyway, it's so nice to see you. And thank you for being back on Just Ask Jody Live.
My pleasure.
You and I, before we went on live today, we talked about a few things we wanted to maybe bring up. And there's always a much longer list of things, and I think we're going to get to, but we're going to try. And by the way, we do have, I really hope that people contribute comments and questions, and I'm happy to go off script and answer your questions. So Nora, nice to see you. All right. So Russell, I thought maybe a good way to start is one of the questions we wanted to talk about is kind of the state of the state within marketers lately. And I think specifically one of the things we were talking about to prepare is how marketers are staffed and set up to run agency reviews and why that matters for agencies. So I'd love you free to share a little bit on that, of the state of marketers right now.
Yeah, I think like all of us, I don't think we realize how traumatized we've been by COVID and the years of either isolation and, just everything has changed. And marketers, like everybody, are short-staffed. Amongst a lot of our clients, they are, missing a couple of people doing the job. One person's doing the job of two or three people. And in the olden days, pre-COVID, reviews used to run like clockwork. The trains would run on time, everything would run. Now, just because of these personnel issues and other things stop. There's gaps.
Mm.
And it's just the reality of, the new normal. And it makes it a lot harder from our perspective to run a review when we have, their reviews have a sense of momentum. And then when they stop for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, you lose all that sense of momentum. So we've experienced this like we've never had before. And it's not like one or two marketers, it's everybody. So it's a really different environment out there. Plus it's a really unsettling environment between the economy, wars, illnesses, whatever you name it. It's a very unsettling time for people. So there seems to be this level of anxiety out there. And, this year it's been a little different, uncharacteristic. The number of reviews, everything we've seen, about 25% less than we typically would see in media. Big media seems to have dominated the show. So 2023 has been a very, very different year, although I must say it's starting to pick up here in the end of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's what I've been finding too, and it's more probably an informal observation. But yeah, this time last year, the beginning of beginning of 2023 was sluggish. Quite frankly, through at least what I observed through or into the third quarter, and now it's starting to pick up. I wish I knew exactly why. Part of me wonders if it's just because marketers just feel like they can't delay things forever. Do you think that's partially the case?
This always happens when there's when the number of searches are constricted there, or drought, whatever you want to call it. In California, it's a drought. They're always, it's like holding that balloon, it'll pop up somewhere else. So what happens is when the volume goes down, then all of a sudden there's a burst of activity followed by another kind of slow period, and then it normalizes itself. So I think that's what we're getting. Plus the other thing is modern marketing. I mean, it's changing by the day, by the minute. AI, whatever. Everybody wants to get out of TV and into social, and just a lot of confusion out there. So if things weren't complicated enough by all the phenomena happening in our lives, I said before, just the state of marketing changing so fast is really adding another layer of anxiety.
And I feel like we've been talking about the state of marketing changing so fast for like 20 years.
Yeah.
So in some ways, it's like, okay, well, at least that's not an illegitimate observation. But I also think, going back to how agencies can position themselves, it's almost like it's never been more important for an agency to position itself as an expert, and in doing so, maybe playing a more, I don't want to say bigger role, but maybe playing a more confident role in how they interact with a client and a pitch.
Well, I feel like all these changes, have happened, and now, like this time, it's for real. And I know we've said that before, but this time, I really do feel like it's for real. And I feel like, in some ways, we're in like a post-advertising, post-creative world where marketers, a lot of in-housing going on, a lot of marketers want to get out of conventional linear TV and put everything into social. So how they're viewing agencies is very different. Something that I've observed, and something for all the agencies out there, we get a lot of decks, hundreds, if not thousands a year. And agencies spend so much time on the positioning, but they're missing a critical point. I don't know what they do for a living. Everybody's like a modern integrated agency. What do you do for a living? I mean, where does the way I get to that answer is I say, give me a pie chart of where your revenue comes from. That way I can determine what you do. So it's always confusing to me, because probably 3/4 of the decks I get, I'm still not sure what the agency does. Beautiful positioning. Tell us what you do.
When I do elevator pitch workshops with my clients, the number one thing we don't always figure it out the first time. It's not always the first thing we figure out, but the first thing in the elevator pitch is the identifier. What do you do? And a lot of times I push back on the innovative studio of ideas or creative brain force, because I say, look, when you are giving that elevator pitch, whether it's on your website, verbally in a conversation like this, or in a creds deck, the recipient is allowing, especially it's like our lizard brain as the audience is really active. And so we are allowing ourselves, we're allowing that person like 2 seconds to legitimize themselves. And so, yes, you may not like the fear of being pigeonholed. Well, I don't want to be an agency. We're so much more. And yet it's impossible for your audience to really understand and then want to continue to engage. The risk is, at least what I found, is that they're just going to shut you down. Like I don't understand what you do. So on to the next conversation.
That brings up another issue actually we talked about previously, and that's the patience factor. This is another post-pandemic behavior that I've observed. Everybody's patience, I think, has been worn thin to some degree, where before when we did chemistry meetings, we would do 2.5 hours. 90 minutes seems long now. An agency deck, we're asking agencies to limit their, for a initial RFI to do limit it to approximately 30 pages, not exactly, because, we can ask 13 questions and get 125 pages back. We have to read it. The marketer has to read it. So with patience wearing thin, less is truly more in new business.
So a lot of times I feel like agencies, they want to share all the good stuff. And there's the fear that, well, 30 slides doesn't give us a chance to share all the good stuff. And I know how I might respond to that. But if that were, let's say that's a comment that came up, what would your reaction be? What would your advice be?
Too much good stuff is not good. When there's too much tonnage to read, you sort of get lost. We have a standard question about, why your agency. And we ask, please in no less or no more than 3 pages, tell us who you are. I've had agencies gone for 15 pages. And it's like, okay, I lost the plot on page 2. So while the desire is to say a lot, you can maybe save that if for another meeting. So really need to get out the most essential points. And I think, we see so much over communication. The problem is with that tonnage, nothing gets communicated at the end of the day. And I think agencies often don't see that. They're so excited to tell everything about themselves that they tell too much.
And going back to the understaffed marketing organization, who maybe it's a senior person looking at this, maybe it's a more junior person, but they, often can be looking through 20, whether it's a review run by you or run by them or run by someone else, 20 documents, 20 RFI responses. That's a lot to go through and to remember. And it's exhausting.
Yeah. Hopefully 20 is a lot. We try to limit that by effort. So, but you're never in a pitch by yourself, or that's very rarely. So you have to consider the context. And, in a small review, everybody's yelling that we're independent. We're not part of a holding company. Everybody's independent. It almost, at a certain point, it looks naive when you spend all of your time telling us about yourself that you are an independent agency. You can get that really quickly.
Yeah, I should start making a formal count of the times I see not just independent, but fiercely independent.
Yeah.
You see that a lot.
It's a problem too, and everybody's saying the same thing. Then all of a sudden it becomes like, oh my God, and then the person who sticks out for a good reason is talking about, is other things, not the same thing. Right. You don't want to be just another good agency.
Yeah. So that's, I think, just to crystallize it into a tip. Recognize the tendency to give too much away or to give too much, and pull back a little bit and make some critical decisions on the agency side. What is most important to communicate to this marketer at this stage of the review? And if it's an early stage, what are the conditions under which you're communicated information? So you want it brief, you want it on target, you want it compelling, all those things. It's easy to say. Of course, it's much harder sometimes to edit down that 82-page deck to those nice 30 slides. What about something else you and I talked about? What about, you had mentioned chemistry meetings, and we talked about this before. A lot of times agencies can't wait to get in front of the client. And I hear this a lot too. And I don't think it's untrue, but they say, if we can get in front of the client, then we tend to close the business. And it can't be true because everyone says that. So something's off. But talk to me a little bit about chemistry meetings And the
I
whole
mean,
notion of chemistry itself.
yeah. Well, we've written for years that, it's called a chemistry meeting, but it's actually much more. And I see the mistake being made on both the marketer side and the agency side that somehow the translation is, oh, I'm going to make you my friend. And while some people have a high degree, we call it high motivation for affiliation, they like people almost over everything else. We're not looking to hire a friend. And I think some agencies make a mistake of trying to, and marketers again, to become friends with everybody. And the reality is, I think when you peel that back, it's like we're really looking for like-minded individuals that view the world through a similar lens. We see things the same way. It's not necessarily, oh, you're so funny, whatever, we really like you. It's viewing that world, it's like-minded people and organizations that resonate with both companies. That is what chemistry is. But so many times I see that being translated as a likability. And while everybody, it's human nature, everybody wants to be liked. And I'm not saying don't be disliked. You don't have to be the buddy.
Yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned this to you before too, that my theory is if you as an individual agency leader or even sort of as an agency, like there are a lot of, if you are the right solution, if you have the right approach and a strong opinion that's very attractive to the client, and the client already sees you as the key to potentially solving their problem, then you can be, I think you could be like an arrogant son of a bitch and still win the business because because your approach is so strong, because your point of view is so strong. Now, that's probably an extreme situation, but where's the chemistry in that?
Yeah. Well, we always counsel marketers, they say, oh, I love this agency. In let's say a post chemistry meeting, we're trying to narrow the list down, and often I'll hear, oh, I don't like that person. It's like, it's easy to change out people. And, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that goes on. Like clients are always saying, I want to see who's going to be in the business. I'm like, if you give us your budget and your scope of work, we can tell you who's going to be in the business. But otherwise, it's very hard to commit to a team unless you know what you're doing. So, we explain to clients that if you don't like the president, or if you don't like 9 out of 10 people, that's probably a good sign that that's not the right agency for you. But individuals can be changed out, and it's fairly easy. So, we say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So that's something that comes up quite frequently.
Yeah. So for an agency, if you're going into a chemistry pitch or the chemistry meeting as part of a pitch, should they be showing this is the question I get all the time. Should they be showing only the agency leadership at that point? Or if they have a feeling they might know who should be working on this business, should they start to introduce the actual, folks who are going to be working on it?
I'm laughing because this is a controversy that comes. In fact, we just had it with a reviewer running where the client said, I only want to see the working team. And again, I said, they don't even know what your budget is. And I always tell clients that, we'd like to see some agency leadership. I think you want to get a nice mix, of at least agency leadership, department heads, and perhaps some people that might be on the working team, because at the end of the day, I say you want to meet the agency leadership, because with the turnover rate in agencies, the reality is that, maybe 2 or 3 out of 10 won't be there, that we showed up in January won't be there in December. But the agency leadership is generally the continuity, the keepers of the flame. They're the keepers of the culture too. And that's why you want to have, I think, some, relationship with them and learn about them, as opposed to just working team.
And I think for agencies too, it's a matter of representing themselves in that way. So it's not a bait and switch. You're not, as an agency, you're not going in there with your senior team saying, sure, we will be working on the business. And hopefully every member of the senior team touches each piece of business in some way. But it's just as you said, like, we are here today at the initial stages of this review to say, here's who runs the agency. Here's how we run it. Here's how we tend to hire people. Here's how we tend to encourage people. And as we get to know each other better, and even to touch on something, Matt Kassendorf, hey, Matt, thanks for being here. Matt Kassendorf of the 4As, if people aren't familiar with him, who said you got to build the trust before you can be, quote unquote, friends. And so building that trust together, it's like, it's a two-way street.
That's an excellent point about Bill. You're not going to build a trust in one meeting, but you need to start that process. And
Yeah.
the mistake I see frequently is that the senior person dominates the meeting and everybody falls in love with them. And then they move the agency on, and then we get the financials, and that person is working 0.5% and they become so disappointed. I think introductions are probably one of the worst handled things in meetings because they just take too long. But I always like to know why that person is in the room. There's nothing worse, I think, than having a big crowd of people and half the people don't say anything.
Right. Yeah. I've always said it's better to have fewer people and each one have a role than have a lot of people with zero roles. And yeah, I think the answer would be like, well, because they want to see our team, and so we feel like we have to have them there. And yeah, I guess I don't know. I'd rather say let's get a really well rehearsed, well crafted presentation with a smaller number of people. And now, of course, as you said, as you move through the review and you get the brief and you get the budget and you get closer to understanding what they need, then I do think it's really important to have other people in the room, the people who will be working on the business. And I
Yeah.
think that's a whole other issue, because sometimes I feel like those people just aren't prepared. They haven't been, it's not a part of their professional development to be in a position to present well to almost anyone. And I wish I saw that more at agencies.
Yeah, that's a separate thing about it. I actually think there's a charm. You don't want to have everybody being a finely tuned, excellent presenter who did, 5 years of, training in the actor's workshop. Because I think, it's like you want a diverse team for a number of reasons. And I think not everybody has to be a great presenter. You can give that person a smaller role. But the casting, people say how many people, obviously we try to match the number of people on the marketer side with the number of people on the agency side. But it's hard. I don't like big meetings because they sort of lack intimacy. We got like 20 people in a chemistry meeting. That's kind of tough that forces a presentation, not a so-called chemistry meeting.
How about on the client side? Do you try to control how many clients want to be in the meeting? Do you find that they want to bring too many people? Because, well, I don't know, for whatever reason they have.
Yeah, we don't like too many. Doing all these online meetings, one of the nice things is that you can have a bigger group. I call them this is not a disparaging term, but the peanut gallery. You can have a lot of the younger folks on there observing, and we make it clear that you guys, you're here for observation. You can't ask questions, but we think it'd be really good for you to see what's going on, hearing your brand dissected by 5 or 6 experts. So, but we do try to keep that team down, and generally there's not a problem with the marketer team. They seem to be getting smaller as time goes on.
And are the agencies okay with that peanut gallery, or do they freak out and think that they have to pitch to them too?
They really don't have a choice, but we explain to them up front, and we spend time with the marketer, because I've had people get upset who were part of the peanut gallery and say, hey, I didn't get a score sheet. It's like, you have a voice, but you don't have a vote. So we make it really clear. We don't want anybody to misunderstand what their role is. But I do think it's beneficial, particularly for the junior members of the team, to hear what's going on, to hear how agencies talk about their brand. It's really insightful for them.
Right. And if agencies can understand that, ideally they should be comfortable and even enthusiastic about the fact that they have an opportunity to expose their team to a broader client team.
Exactly. I rarely get a complaint about that, but we just want both parties to understand what's going on here and not be surprised. There's 140 people, which we have had for really big global
That's
reviews.
Cool, though.
Yeah.
Going back to chemistry for a minute, because the other thing too about chemistry is, I think you and I agree, there's this sense of like, if we could just get in the room, we could just become friends, then everything's going to be great. And I usually say, no, you're confusing chemistry with a sense of salesmanship, which I think is more about understanding their needs, listening to what they say, listening to cues. But then there's also chemistry on your own team. And one of the things we were talking about before this live is, I was relating an experience way back when I was with an agency, and we were basically positioned to win a pretty big pitch. And for whatever reason, we went in, and the team sort of some was sniping at each other, telling them to hurry along because you're talking to them. It was awful. And the client was like, we couldn't wait for your presentation, but we were so uncomfortable by witnessing the interaction of the team that we did not
Yeah,
move forward.
we typically have in our scorecard a criteria for intra-agency chemistry because, and
Hmm.
I've seen some really bad things where you can see the team just is not reacting um, well with one another versus, people really know each other, they have nicknames and they finish each other's sentences. And an example is I've seen a presenter go up and then just take their phone after they're done. I'm like, okay, my part's done, and spend the rest of the meeting on the phone. And I've seen that many, many times. And it's just like, you're sending a really bad signal about you really don't care. Your part is done. And clients pick up on that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's where chemistry is actually super important, is showing chemistry with your own team. And it's not even like, well, we got to show chemistry because well, I shouldn't say that. My team in that pitch situation that I was describing, the team had great chemistry. We got along great. Everyone really liked and respected each other and worked well together. And I actually think that also points to, looking back on it, it's like, wow, well, why did it fall apart? Well, it fell apart because we didn't actually prepare well enough. Because yes, there was the rushed parts. There were the parts that weren't that rehearsed. There were the parts, the content that maybe should have been edited more. And that's where that can really undermine great chemistry. So I can't believe this all happens often. We are almost at the bottom of the hour. So I want to move on from chemistry though, because I'd love to try to fit a couple of things in and maybe go a little over if that's okay. The other thing that we talking about, yeah, I'm trying to pick which one do I want to talk, which one should I go for? Let's talk about virtual meetings, because I think that actually does also relate to chemistry. And you also said at the beginning of this how we're still feeling the effects of COVID. While everything is kind of going back to the way it was, so much is never going to be the same again. What are some of the best practices and some of the mistakes that you're seeing agencies do on Zoom meetings that we can learn from?
I want to start first by talking about, some of the changes we've seen. Then I'll answer your
Yeah.
question because, and by that I mean that we're starting to see more what I would call hybrid, where one or two of the meetings will be in person, the rest will be online. I have been a staunch advocate of, if we going to do one in-person meeting, I would prefer to do the chemistry meeting, because the finals is much more, you know the agency, and that can be handled much more online. But if you find that you don't like these people in the finals meeting, it's a little too late. So I've been pushing to do, if we're going to do one in-person meeting, I like to do the chemistry meeting. I think it's that important, even though it's a hassle. And one of the things that I don't like to do is have participants both online and virtual, because I think it's like, it rips your brain apart, because you're perceiving things different ways. You're perceiving the online person versus the in-person person differently. So getting back to what are we seeing? So we've really cut. I'm sort of amazed, because we've been cutting the chemistry meeting to about 90 minutes. Which, if you would have told me that 5 years ago, I'd say, well, that's not enough time. Now I'm like, wow, that seems like it's almost too much time. We're really trying to get everything done up front. We find a lot of agencies still this day are having some technical problems. One of the biggest problems that we run into is we have 3 presenters at the agency and they're all in the same room. And the problem, I see this every week, that we're getting like a feedback on the mics. And if you're going to do that, you can't be speaking. You need to have earbuds and your own mic. So that's always frustrating. We go through all this trouble, and then we have technical difficulties, which I thought I would have never predicted 4 years after going to a lot of virtual meetings. So that's really important. And, still videos don't run and things like that. But I think people are so much more attuned to the ins and outs of a video meeting. We still have clients who go, no way, I have to see them in person. We'll be happy, whatever makes them comfortable. So I think we're much more acclimated to an online meeting. I just think they still need to be shorter and crisper. And I've been an advocate for many years of having what I call the meeting wrangler on the agency side. When things slow down, got to have that one person say, we would love to talk about this all afternoon, but if you want, we can address this offline. You need to have that person that just moves things along.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with you. Either make it all virtual or all live. And even if you as the agency, you're in the same all in the same place, put people in different offices. It's just well, it's unfair to the client, but it's also unfair to you. You're just not going to come across. You're not going to be able to communicate as effectively. I'm also a little bit amazed. I This is an informal survey I've taken, but when I ask people or ask agencies like, how do you equip your team to present well at home? What kind of infrastructure are you giving them, or what kind of allowance are you giving them? And often the answer is, we don't give them anything. And so I think that I would love to see more agencies have as part of the requirements of working at home, like sort of like my setup. It's not super fancy, but I've got a good camera. I've got decent lighting. I've got a microphone. I have my AirPods in so that I don't create a lot of echo. And I just think that most agents, for whatever reason, a lot of agencies don't think
I,
it through.
I agree. I mean, I'm in my office, so I have
Mhm.
fiber optics. I have very expensive lighting. Um, at home, it was charming in the beginning of the pandemic to see your dog interrupt or your baby start crying. Now it's seen as a pain in the ass. So
Yeah.
I think we've changed how we do that. But I am surprised at people's poor connections and where they're at. I think after many years of doing that, you got to have at least a studio, fake background, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I encourage that. Um, and yeah, also know what kind of technology to use. I think I've got some, like, for video. I think I've always been a little bit on the fence about using video in a pitch meeting. I think maybe if it's part of a creative pitch or part of framing a creative idea, maybe that's okay. But I just hate when agencies open up, especially things like a chemistry meeting with like, well, here's our sizzle reel. So welcome. Here's the human beings in the room. But we're going to defer talking to you for 3 minutes so you can watch a video.
Well,
um,
something else that just happened to us, by the way, is we had agencies that were showing. This was for a client who wanted to make a film, so we were looking at more filmmakers. And the first agency, their film, for some reason, I don't technically understand why this happened, but theirs was great. The second agency was glitching, and the client goes, "Wow, those people really don't know what they're doing." And I have that was really an unfair comment. I don't know why. So, we seen everything from agencies, putting up a QR code or saying, "Look, we're going to put in the chat. Here's the link. Everybody go on mute." But I don't understand why some video comes across as being seamless and others is lagging, and then they have to, just stop it.
yeah, I don't either actually, but it probably has to do with file size. Probably has to do with either you're hardwired
I
into
don't
your
know.
Wi-Fi.
It,
Yeah,
it it looks really bad because you're
yeah,
supposed to be the expert in
yeah.
these areas. So when you see it
That's right.
like put, put up together two agencies, it looks bad.
So something David Murphy was commenting on chemistry meetings. Now clients pick up the small stuff, and that I think is also a great example of this. The our capacity, our human brains, what we tend to do is we don't say, "Oh, they're having some technical difficulties." What we do is they say, "We have some technical difficulties, but I really need this agency to. I'm counting on them to execute flawlessly." Also a phrase I hate, but whatever. I'm counting on this agency to do their job well, and they're kind of indicating that they can't do the job well, and it's implying a risk for me. And of course, all this happens in nanoseconds, but it creates a narrative in the brains of the audience that I think can be really damaging.
To David's point, I agree. It's almost like being in that focus group room where everybody's making fun of the
Yeah.
respondees.
Oh
Happy.
yeah.
But the reality is both
Mm,
clients and agencies are saying the same thing. Could you believe that? But it's the
right.
marketer who has the power. So yeah, sometimes I'm like, that's why we have a scorecard. It's like, don't look at their clothing. It's not part of this.
Yeah, interesting. I know Lisa Spielman. Hello, Lisa. That a scorecard is so important. And actually, she was hoping to know what some of the criteria was. I don't know if you're willing to share that,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But by the way,
does it
this
change?
do you want me to address the scorecard or
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we clients are always saying, "Don't you have a template?" Well, every review is different, so we don't use the same template. But generally, they're different for various meetings. In a chemistry meeting, you're looking obviously at the team. I talked about intra company chemistry and whatever we've asked in there. Um, it's like, the strategy. Did they do more homework? Did they get it? Do they understand our problem? Because I always, when you get to the finals, there's always one agency that really understands it and a couple others that
Mhm.
really don't understand it. So did they do homework? Did they understand your company? Did they show off some smarts? And then, we'll ask whatever is in the chemistry meeting, we'll add a lot. And then we'll generally add towards the bottom, they did a good job in Q&A, where so many agencies fall down in Q&A.
Mhm.
Never say, that's a great question, but, and then think,
Which,
okay, I
when
mean, what,
someone says that, I immediately think they're buying time to figure
right.
out how the hell they're going to answer this question.
And the way to do that, I think, would be, that's a great question. It's going to take longer than we have here. Can we get back to you offline on that one? And I love honesty. I hadn't really thought about that, but, you know, it's, and then the other curse is one more thing. And then one more thing goes to 20 minutes. We heard the answer the first time. We didn't
Yeah.
need iterations of the same thing because everybody wants to talk.
Yeah. Going back to the not the one more thing, what we were just talking about. Oh my gosh. The
Scorecard.
scorecard. Yes. So do you also have your audience, your clients discuss the scorecard? So if
Oh,
someone scores someone an 8 and another person scores the same thing as a 3, do you have a debate about why that
we
is?
review. I'll let you in on some. So first of all, we use a 5-point scale because I think everybody's acclimated, mainly because of Amazon and everything is being rated.
Yeah.
So 5-point scale. It's also, if you do like 7, it's not divisible. It's got math
Right.
problems. So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
use a 5-point scale first of all, and then what we'll do is have what I call the pincer movement. When we're done, I'll say, okay, generally somebody from our company is being the host of the post meeting, and it's like the pincer movement in my mind is like, okay, is there any of these agencies that rose to the top of everybody's list? And there's generally a lot of agreements, like, oh, we like agency A and agency B. And then the other side of the pincer, are there any agencies that fell to the bottom of the list? And then we work our way towards the middle. And there's really good discussions in those meetings because we try to make, that scorecard not formulaic, really,
Yeah.
so people will think a lot in there. So there's a lot of discussion, and we always counsel, if you can't make up your mind, go long, because adding one more agency won't be catastrophic. You can't add too many agencies, but if you're not
Yeah.
quite sure, move them on to the next round.
Interesting. Wow. We're already over time, so I don't want to keep you and everyone else who's on live today. But is there anything else that you're dying to make sure that agencies know that we should pass along to the folks who are listening today, or dialing today, and then who will be listening when they hear the recording?
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that's come up a bit this year, and it's like, everybody's disappointed. I hate to lose, and agencies hate to lose, but there's this mentality that I should win every single pitch that we enter, which I think it's not so much about your agency, but it's about, did everyone you ever went on a date with, should they be a prospective spouse? No,
Yeah.
it's not so much that you're deficient. It's just that the two of you were never meant to get along. So that mentality of, oh, you throw a crummy pitch, your pitch process stinks, and which people say every now and then, which, it's like, okay, fine. But the mentality that you should win every pitch, it's that gets back to the personality contest. I have the best personality. I have great chemistry with everybody. And the fact that I just can't believe something went wrong here and it's not us. So I hear that a lot, which drives me up the wall.
So you're not going to win everything, agencies. And sometimes it may feel unjust. And, sometimes I think the decisions are hard, right? It comes down to, I always hated that you were a close second. Yeah. Well, cold comfort. But it's hard. I want to actually, David Murphy, he also included a quick question. I want to make sure I get to that, if that's okay, which is the preference on the role of the post pitch leave behind, detailed summary of the proposal, or a short narrative to remember an agency by. Any thoughts? And do you actually prescribe something as a review?
We ask agencies all the time, please send us, I know you don't want to send the document beforehand, please send us immediately following the pitch. we like to have a first meeting, and I like people to sleep on it because
Mhm.
sometimes you know 12 hours, 24 hours of thought will
Yes.
make you very different. But we love, if you don't send that pitch document, it really hurts because clients are always, saying, I think they said this. And I can't believe how we have to run after agencies and bug them.
Mm,
Some don't send it for a day or two, and that just looks
right.
sloppy.
So know that you wanna send it leave behind and prepare that along with the deck. But
We,
also to David's point, should it be a short narrative, or should it be something more detailed?
it's harder in online meetings, but we'd actually like to get a copy of the deck, and then if they want to send anything else, that's fine. But
Mhm, okay.
generally, what clients are looking for is, I would like to reprise that meeting in my mind with the deck, and that helps. That's a great memory aid.
I think that, you just touched on something that I always work with on my clients. What is their objective in asking for this? So is it because they want a ton more information and so they can cross-reference and learn more, or do they just want to be able to jog their memory? And if it's the latter, then David, I would say probably either the slides, so they're like, "Oh yes, even remember the sequence, and then we talked about this here," um, and the detailed summary is just going to cause they're going to spend more time, more reading, and probably will be ignored unless it's asked for, unless it's said like we want. Yeah, and I think maybe this could be in a presentation. It might be just stay top line and then send something much deeper. I don't know. It's really like understanding why do they want this.
And that's generally, in our case, and the clients are asking for that. One other thing that's, I don't know the right answer on this because agencies say, hey, we'd love to send them a thank you note. And often they're gratuitous. My personal opinion is it's like, just a quick, hey, we want to thank you. Sometimes agencies go on and send all this other stuff, use it as an aperture to flood the
Mhm.
client with more information.
Mm.
So thank you is great. Using that as a subterfuge to send more information is not.
What if something comes up in the meeting and the agency leader, the pitch leader, the CEO sends a note that says, "Listen, you brought this thing up, and I've been thinking more about this, and I actually have some quality ideas, not supercilious or vapid ideas, but like I've really been thinking about this, and I've been and here are some thoughts." That sounds like a good thing, as long as it's not right
Yeah,
or not.
yeah. I mean, it's hard. You're saying the CEO
Mm.
of the agency?
Yeah, or whoever's
Yeah.
running the pitch, whatever top leader.
In my mind, if this just happened a real pitch situation, we
Yeah.
try to keep things level, and then
Okay. Gotcha.
like
Yeah.
giving the CEO another chance to communicate kind of unlevels the playing field. So a
I
lot of times
see.
there's not hard and fast answers. If it's something that is amazingly brilliant that the client goes, oh my God, I can't believe that. I'd like to hear a little bit more, what are you going to tell the
Yeah.
client? No. So,
Right.
but we try to keep things as level
Okay.
as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose that's also when the agencies can lean on their relationship with you. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, what if,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what if they had like the most brilliant idea over dinner that night? Then I think I might say, look, call Russell and
And
tell
I'll
him.
say no.
Well, and he might,
I
but
mean,
I think
depending
I
on
also
what
know
it
you.
is, you
Yeah.
need to be open-minded, and we just be aware that agencies are generally trying to unlevel the playing field, and I
Yes.
get it. And when I'm pitching, I try to do things not completely blow it up. So, as I've always said, color outside of the lines, but don't blow up the rules.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. This has been so great, Russell. Thank you. I'd love to have you. I'd love to make this an annual appearance.
Yes,
So,
these are like our conversations with Jody and I. We get a big lather, and they go on for like an hour and a half.
ah, I was like, I can't believe it's already 45 minutes past the hour quarter. But look, so folks, this will be on the recording will be available as well on the Sutter Company LinkedIn events page or the Sutter Company LinkedIn page. And yeah, Russell, thank you
Thank you,
so
everyone,
much.
for attending, and
Yeah, and there's so many things we didn't talk about, but we'll save that for the next one.
very good.
Great. Thank you, Russell.